Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Heads Up Podcast, episode 11, for the week ended January 12th, 2013. I'm your host, William Strife. It's been a while, everyone, and I figure the first of all things that I should cover is why I haven't done a podcast in roughly 3 months now, I think it's been. And I have a relatively good answer for that. I don't know if it'll be good enough for some of you, but the main reason why I haven't been doing podcasts lately, or at all for the most part, is because I don't really like talking to myself. I would much prefer to do these podcasts if I had someone to, bounce some dialogue off of, have some sort of a conversation going. That's something that I can't have whenever I'm working alone, and I've had a significantly difficult time finding someone to do the podcasts with me. But that's really the short of the reason why I haven't done any. It's because I just simply don't like talking to myself for, around an hour, or at least that's what it feels like, talking to myself. So if I could find someone else to help me, then, it would all be good and fine. If any of you think that there's a specific person who would be fantastic, who, actually takes the time to follow video game news and whatnot, then go ahead, drop them a line, say something about me to them, because if they hear from their followers, then they're probably more likely to look me up. As it stands, though, I'm a little bit too busy to go searching for someone else to help me do the podcast. I think that the next thing I should cover is the fact that I've been extremely active over the past couple of weeks. So I'll start with Skyrim. Basically, sometime during December, I finally got myself together, even though it took, pretty much more than a year, which is more or less unacceptable, but it took me a very long time, but I finally put together a guide suite for Skyrim, and, what I've done, and I'm certain that many of you have seen the videos. It's a full 5-episode set of guides over how to get the master spells for each of the schools of magic in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And, I'm assuming that most of you have seen it, most of you who are bothering to drop by and watch the podcast here. If you haven't seen the videos, don't worry, there's going to be a link in the there should be a link in the description, and down in the video, there should be an annotation that you can click through for as well. But the thing about those videos is, it took me a really, really long time to put them together. All I can really say is, sorry, it's, just the way it works out. I had to find time to do the work, and I kept having trouble with Skyrim crashing whenever I was, spending time trying to capture footage and whatnot. But, tell me what you think of the videos that I've been working on. I know that I have had a couple of what I consider to be relatively obscure comments, because I've not even a full handful of comments have come through that have said things along the lines of, the Skyrim videos were just crap. I guess the quality would be referring to the level of graphics and visuals that I've put into them, and I'm pretty sure that it was the people who have leveled complaints on that, I suppose that they were speaking directly back to the quality of the Fallout New Vegas weapon guides that I did quite some time ago. And, in my defense for that fact, if the Skyrim videos look a little bit too bland in comparison to the New Vegas videos, it's because with the New Vegas gun guides, I remember specifically wanting to come up with a very, cool and stylish way to present each gun. And that's where I came up with the basic idea where I shoot the character that I've made, taking the gun out, loading it up, aiming, and then shooting an enemy. And, I thought that was really, really cool. And it was cool, except I had to do, 6, maybe it was 7 guides, I don't quite remember. I did a whole lot of guides over weapons in Fallout New Vegas, and by the time I got down to the last one, which was melee and unarmed, I was so sick of that, system of, load up the gun, aim, shoot type of situation, and I realized that it wasn't really contributing to telling you what you needed to know about the guns, even though it was really, really slick and stylish. And I can understand how some people, you really got attached to that, because the guides, I specifically wrote those with the intent of, you don't have to watch these in order that I made them. But, they were produced in a specific order, handguns was first and melee was last. And if you watch them in order, you can see my progression through the scripts, referring to each individual set of weapons in the way that I open and I close. But by the time I got down to that last video and everything, even though I had designed everything to be watched out of order, I was completely sick of the extremely stylized and highly edited way that I had put it together. And I said to myself, I'm not going to do that again, because this is way too much work for something that I felt was overdone by the end. So, that's the main reason why I suppose anybody, but if the complaints pertaining to the Skyrim videos about them being lesser in quality of graphics and whatnot, if that is the reason, because they're not as highly stylized as the way I put together the New Vegas weapon videos, that was a choice that I made directly, and I stand by it and everything. But that's my reasoning behind it. Not that I'm taking complaints like those to heart anyway, because like I said, I didn't even get a full handful. Okay, but yeah, that's what I was saying. That's the subject. The Skyrim Master Magic Suite, as I like to call it. 5 videos. If you guys haven't watched them, go ahead, check them out. I do my best to make certain that the guides are entertaining, even if, you don't care about the content in it and whatnot. So go ahead, check those out if you haven't. And if you already have seen them, go ahead, drop down to the comments, tell me if you like the guides in comparison to the previous work that I've done. And on the note of creating content, I figure it's a reasonable enough thing to, come through and say something about the fact that I've been extremely active since the month of December started. And, now it's January. So the first thing that I want to, hit on for that is the main reason why I kind of kicked into high gear as soon as December started was because, I follow various groups on YouTube, and I noticed that they started doing live streaming and whatnot to kind of, promote charity or one thing or another. And I thought to myself, well, that's something really nice, and I'd really like to, put out more content myself, at least for December, which is exactly what I decided to do. And as most of you probably know by now, my solution was to pick up the Wii U, which I had purchased, just a week or two before I started doing this. I took the Wii U and I plugged it into my my capture card for my computer, and I started playing through Zombie U and talking at the same time, basically doing a Let's Play. And that received more positive. That had a higher positive reception than I was expecting it to. So I decided to also, and my intention was to do, the Zombie U play 3 videos a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then, after I did that for a week, I thought, well, I've got a pretty good positive reception from that. Why don't I do that with a separate game on Tuesday and Thursday? Just do the same thing, but with a different game for the other 2 days out of the week. And publish the Skyrim guide on Saturday as, kind of like the great way to end the week. So that's exactly what I did. And the first game that I picked up to complement the Zombie U play and the Skyrim guide were Don't Starve, and that one actually really exploded. I didn't expect so many people to really enjoy watching me play that game. So, I went through that, and I got about 6 videos out, I think. And also on Christmas Day, I ended up doing a review over Little Inferno, which was a fantastic game. I suggest anybody who saw it, anybody listening to this right now, if you haven't seen my review over Little Inferno, I suggest you go watch it, and then I suggest you immediately go and purchase the game for the... I know it's available on Steam, and you can also get it for the Wii U if you have one, but fantastic game. I suggest all of you go out and buy it, because I was absolutely satisfied with the, I think it was $20 that was it 20? Maybe $15 that I spent on the game. I don't quite remember, but definitely worth my time and money. But back to the point, the whole entire deal of creating additional content, basically I've been running myself ragged trying to get those videos out on a daily basis. And, it just eats up so much of my time. I don't really have any time to create weekend videos now. And the big reason why I was able to get the Skyrim videos out on a weekly basis was because I was leading up to doing that content. And then the Let's Plays that I was putting up during the week were just kind of an afterthought that I just kind of did. And it caught on better than I thought it would. So now that the entire Skyrim suite is out, and I was only able to do it because I had already captured all the footage and I had already written all the scripts. I had already done all the voice recording. I was just, in the process of getting everything together and actually editing the videos and creating the effects and whatnot. So that's why the Skyrim videos were able to come out on the weekends as I was doing the Let's Plays. Now I don't have any scripts done. I don't have any voice recording done. I don't have any footage captured. So I can't put guides out on the weekend because I'm absolutely tapped. It's not that I don't have any other ideas. It's just that I don't have any other content to work off of. And I have no time to make it as long as I'm doing those plays. Which leads me up to the statement that I'm going to make now. And that is, I'm going to finish up my Zombie U Let's Play. There's a good chance that I'll bump up the play times for each episode to finish it faster. And as most of you already know, I finished my Don't Starve play. That was fun. I might revisit that at a later date, who knows. And, finally, the other one that I'm working on right now, Trine 2, I'm probably going to drop that. I'll keep going. I'll make more videos. There's a chance that it might not get past another week. I'm not entirely certain because, as good of a game as Trine 2 is, and I intend to keep playing it, there just doesn't seem to be enough interest in it. And if the juice, and in this case, the juice does not seem worth the squeeze. So basically what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is basically toning everything down, speeding up the plays that I already have going, just to either finish them or close them out. And then I'm going to go back to my pseudo sleeper mode where I don't really publish much of anything, so I can, get some real work done, go back to writing some scripts and collecting some data. And actually I need to catch up on my gaming, because over the holiday, because I was so busy putting out those videos, I haven't actually finished Dishonored yet. And that's a game that, I got into and I'm very, very interested in finishing, but I just haven't had the time to really play through it very much. And the way that I play through Dishonored is extremely time consuming because it's not something I'm proud of, but I'm save scumming my way through it really because I want to get through the entire game without being noticed. So as soon as someone sees me, oh, well, crap, I have to load up a save that I just made. So it can be really, really time consuming. And, it's not that I'm proud of save scumming my way through a game. It's just that I have this incredible OCD for wanting to not be seen. So that's just the way it is for me. But yeah, that's the situation. That's the whole situation that I sit in with the content right now. I have lots of ideas for additional videos and whatnot. I just don't have anything that I can work off right now. So, more or less now the weekend content has come to an end. I've got something else up my sleeve that I'm going to pull up soon to, replace the weekend content just while I'm wrapping up the Let's Plays over the weeks. But in addition to that, that's the whole deal. I'm going to wrap things up and then go back into sleeper mode so I can get some real work done. And, I've more or less hit the lull period during, post-Christmas season. It's early January to about March. Nothing really interesting comes out. And to be quite honest, there's nothing coming out that I have any serious interest in for this year until BioShock Infinite, which I think drops in March. I'm not entirely certain. I'll have to go back and look at that again. But I'm going to be closing up my content and going back to my pseudo sleeper mode, because I need to get back to writing to create higher quality content. So on that note of closing everything up and getting to writing, I'm going to move on to the next subject, which is after I return to my sleep mode, I guess you could say, where I don't really do a whole lot on my channel. I'm going to get my hands back into the process of writing. I really need to get back into making video game guides, because that's where I started. That's really where my strong point lies. It's not that I only write video game guides. It's just that's a really good strength for me. So I'm going to get back to that, and I'm going to start working on other guides. I do have a 12-part guide series that I've been working on for the past several months that, I just keep on writing on it and tinkering with it, and I'm like, this thing is getting way too big. I need to figure out how to slim it down. But after I do that, I'm like, okay, now it's so slim, I'm missing a whole lot of important content, and I'm batting it back and forth, and it's a big, long process. You never really feel like you're finished writing whenever you learn how to write. The other thing is that, I have some content that I would really like to flesh out for the Elements of Play series that I did, because I'm not entirely certain that I want to let this information out, but at the same time, I don't see too much of a problem with, making this statement. But as most of you probably know, I did the show Elements of Play. I did one season for Machinima, and the show went up on their community channel. And then after the first season ended, there was a bit of a conflict of interests between myself and Machinima, and I walked away with the episodes that I had produced for season 2. And that's pretty much what I've said up to this point in time, but now I feel a little bit more comfortable letting out what exactly happened. Not all the details, but basically what happened in that situation, and the reason why 6 episodes of Elements of Play season 2, because a season is 12 episodes, and I had gotten the first 6 done, and I was ready to deliver it to them, and I started, they hadn't really talked to me, so I went and I sent them an email, and I was like, okay, first 6 episodes of season 2 already, what are we doing here? I mean, how come you guys haven't been pressing me for the content? Because I was running behind schedule. And I basically got a statement back saying they were displeased with the view count. I suppose my content, it's not fast-paced, it's not, quick shot, funny one-liners, which is really what a whole lot of the content on Machinima is. And basically that, and I'm pretty sure that that's the reason why my show ended up getting fewer views than they would have liked. And their solution was not to tell me to change what I was doing with the show. Their solution was to try and tell me what games to cover in each episode. And, that would have been perfectly fine if they had tried telling me this way, way, way ahead of time. But they decided to tell me this after I had finished the first 6 episodes of season 2. And whenever they told me to do that, I was like, well, okay, I can do that if you really want, but I've already got the first 6 episodes of season 2 done. And they were like, okay, well, what game is in them? And if you look back at the first 6 episodes of season 2 that are on my channel, you'll understand, and those were published in early 2012. You'll understand that the most recent game out of those episodes, in relation to the time period that they were to be published, the most recent game was Deus Ex Human Revolution, which was released, I think, in August or September. I don't know. It was a very late release in the year, basically on that wave of games that happens right before the holiday. So it's, early 2012, sometime late in the first quarter, not quite March yet. I think it was about February. And they found out that the latest game that I brought up in those episodes was Deus Ex Human Revolution, which by that time, probably a good 4 to 5 months old, and their response to that was, oh, well, that's too old. So instead of working with me on it, they told me to throw the episodes out. Just throw, just toss those 8 weeks of workout that you did. We don't want that. And as soon as they basically told me that those weren't their exact words, but that's essentially what they said. They don't want the content. Now, go make the content we do want. And as soon as they basically told me that, I turned around and said, I don't think that this series should continue here. To which, they didn't have a problem with, because it wasn't making the view count they wanted. So they just, didn't care, and I walked away, and I put the first 6 episodes of season 2 on my channel. So that's how it happened. Now, that's a long, drawn-out story, and I'm certain plenty of you will have quite a bit to say about it down in the comments. I was pretty badly burned whenever it happened. If you go back and look through some of my videos, I did put a particular episode up of the podcast here, I think, about how EOP was canceled. And, I sound pretty depressed in that episode for pretty good reasons. But, as bad as that story is, as many of the things as you guys have to say, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because, now that I'm going back into my sleep mode and I'm going to get back to writing, in the process of creating those first 6 episodes, I was hauling ass, okay? I was just working as fast as I could, writing as much as I could, capturing as much footage as I could. I literally had to stop playing games to make that series. So, things were kind of caving in on me as it was. But once I had finished those first 6 episodes, I had already had the subjects and the games picked out for the next 6 episodes. And what I actually had up until that point, whenever, I left Machinima and put the content up on my own channel, I had 3 scripts pretty much done, not completely done, but pretty much done for the second season, since one season is 12 episodes long. So I had 3 scripts almost completely done, and I had another 3 scripts where the topics were picked out, and the topics were picked out and the games were chosen. I just had to write the content. And, that I was up to the point where I had to, dive headfirst into writing those episodes. And that's when, basically everything fell apart. And I was like, you know what, forget about it. So those, as far as, elements of play is concerned, I have content that's kind of been sitting and collecting dust. I really want to go back and take another look at the scripts that I wrote. I want to take another look at the subjects that I had, and I want to give a good, I want to give a good once-over to what I thought would be a good idea, and I want to, reevaluate it and start writing all of that content again and try to get another 6 episodes out to finish the second season, even though it's kind of more like a third season now. But yeah, the entire reason why I've brought all of this up is because now that I'm back to writing, I'm not just all about guides. I want to go back and do some more content for the Elements of Play show. So with any luck, in, I don't know, given how fast I work, it'll probably be a couple of months before you guys see anything out of Elements of Play again. But at the same time, you have my guarantee. I'm going to go back to it. The only thing that's going to stop me is some sort of an earth-shattering, life-changing event, or death, which in all honesty is a life-changing event, but you get the idea. Yeah, but that's the whole situation for that. So that's basically bringing you guys completely up to speed on where I am right now. Where I've been, what I've done, and where I'm going, more or less. So now that that's all been covered, what do you say we move on to some news? Okay, so the first bit of news to cover is probably the biggest and most important thing that most of you want to know about, or already know about, or want to hear my opinion on or something. But seeing as how it is, the 12th of January, 2013, just a couple of days ago, there was a particular bit of information that was released pertaining to Fallout 4. Now, don't go jumping up and down. This isn't it's not an official announcement, but Eric Todd Dellums, or better known as the man who voiced Three Dog from Fallout 3, the radio DJ, tweeted on his account, he tweeted on his Twitter account, to, quote, "To all my Fallout 3 and Three Dog fans," hashtags in front of those two, "there may be more of the dog coming, fingers crossed." And then he followed up in a separate tweet saying, quote, "How was that for a tease? I was given permission to release that tease, so fingers crossed." All right, now that's all that was said. There was no official announcement. There was nothing, to give us any direction or solid idea on Fallout 4. There's never been any doubt in my mind that there was going to be another Fallout, okay? So, it's more or less, it's always, since the beginning, since the success of Fallout 3, since the success of Fallout New Vegas, it's always been a scenario of, well, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how long we have to wait till it happens. So this is the first sign that signifies, it's kind of a pseudo confirmation. It's pretty close to real, but not completely real. And it's pretty close to official, but not completely official. That's what I meant. So, this gives us more or less the best thing, the next best thing to an official statement that Fallout 4 is happening. And the reason why this, has any sort of a weight to it is because, number one, Mr. Dellums is a major character in Fallout 3. It's not, he's not someone that you talk directly to, but if you turn on, one of the two radio stations in the game, really, you hear him, okay? You hear him a lot, and he's one of the predominant features that you're always going to hear in the Fallout 3, whenever you're experiencing Fallout 3, because, it doesn't really matter who you are. You're probably going to turn the radio on at some point, or, you're going to wander by a radio sitting out somewhere in the world at some point, and you hear Three Dog talking on the radio. So he's kind of, the one thing that most likely everybody who played Fallout 3 is acquainted with. So for someone like him, Mr. Dellums, the voice actor, to be making a statement of, I might be coming back, there might be more of this character that I played, there might be more of this DJ character I played as coming. That's a major thing, because actors don't just pull things out of thin air whenever they're talking about roles. Especially whenever it comes to the possibility of returning to a role. So, that's what makes this, a pretty solid piece of information. The other thing was his second quote being, "How was that for a tease? I was given permission to release that tease." So, obviously he had to have some sort of, green light to say something, whether that actually came from Bethesda or ZeniMax, or whether that actually came from Bethesda and ZeniMax, or his, agent, is another story. So this is probably something else that I figure I might as well cover on the Three Dog subject, is that Three Dog in Fallout 3 is actually a character you can kill. And, this is actually something that never crossed my mind to talk about, but I was watching a show from another media coverage outlet, and they were talking about, well, this doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, because what about all those characters who went and killed Three Dog? And, then of course there's the concerns about continuity in the Elder Scrolls series and whatnot. It ties right into that argument as well, but it's basically this argument of, well, that couldn't, why the hell is Three Dog alive? I killed him. And, there's this whole entire deal in these large open world games. There's specifically a problem with the Bethesda titles because they give you such an open range of what, do whatever you want to do. And it's something that I'm really, really amazed that most people don't just kind of get, because it's something that I've always understood myself. I've never really given much thought to it. I always just assumed this to be the case. In a game, specifically Bethesda's games, where they give you such an incredible free roam, where they give you such free range to just go wherever you want and do whatever you want to do, it's always come across to me as blatantly obvious that if they want to carry along some sort of canon, that is to say, you know, this is the set of events that actually happens, they have to figure out what set of events were supposed to actually happen. So, from what I'm to understand in all the Bethesda games, despite the fact that you're given the opportunity to be a really big dick and just kill whoever you want to kill, it's always seemed to be an understood fact that regardless of what you as a player decide to do in the game, as far as canon is concerned, the player, because, you know, after you go on in the game, after the game finishes and, you know, you go on and you start the next game in the series, you know, it's presumably, you know, only a couple of years down the line, and the hero from the last game is still alive, still has to be alive out there somewhere doing something, but you're no longer playing that character. So what did that character actually do, since we don't import saves or anything like that? The immediate thing that I always jumped to, that I always assumed, is that number one, the character from the previous game officially finished every last quest possible, maxed out all the skills possible, and didn't go killing anyone unnecessarily, okay? So a good example for that would be in Skyrim, for instance. It's possible, the Dark Brotherhood. I'm not going to spoil anything for those of you who are worried, but in Skyrim, you can join the Dark Brotherhood. But it is also possible to, instead of join the Dark Brotherhood whenever the quest line starts, you can instead opt to just kill the leader, which by no means is a small task. And then you can follow along a much shorter quest line to hunt the Dark Brotherhood. So, you know, that's something that it's completely different. And because it's the shorter storyline, it doesn't really seem to fit a whole lot with the whole political climate and whatnot. By all means, I have no doubt in my mind that the official canon will be the Dovahkiin actually joined the Dark Brotherhood and did not do the alternative option of, you know, hunting and wiping them out. So, you know, that's basically the assumption that I've always made. The main character from the previous game, does everything, and they're more or less not a major prick by the end of the game. So that's just the basic rule. And another thing specific to the Elder Scrolls, for this matter, is that, you know, whenever you go on to the next game, a lot of people were like, well, that's not possible because my hero was a Khajiit. My hero was an Argonian. And it's like, well, in all honesty, the way that the canon carries through for the, you know, the race and the sex of the hero, whatever you default to whenever you go to the character creation screen, like for instance, whenever you've created a character in Morrowind, you automatically defaulted to being a Dark Elf or a Dunmer. And in Oblivion, you automatically defaulted to being a male Imperial. In Skyrim, you automatically default to being a male Nord. So naturally, canonically, whatever it is that you default to for character creation is going to be who the hero from the previous game is going to be officially, if they're ever referenced to. But, you know, I'm kind of going off on another tangent here, especially considering that I was talking about Fallout first. But, you know, all of this ties back to the point that I'm trying to make in Fallout. Some people will say, well, how is it possible that Three Dog is still alive in Fallout 4 if he does turn up in Fallout 4? Granted, we don't know that it's for certain yet. We don't even know for certain that Fallout 4 is being made. We just have a good idea. But how would it be possible that he's alive? I killed him. Well, simple. Canonically, the Lone Wanderer, in all respects, I believe, was a character who went across the entire wasteland, completed every quest, and more than likely didn't, dip too far into being an enormous douchebag, and mostly helped people like his father before him. And that's another thing. The Lone Wanderer, no question, it's a man, because that's what you default to whenever you go through character creation. And I just covered that in detail. So, that's a subject that I really didn't expect to talk about at all until I went and I watched someone else's coverage, and they got into that whole entire ridiculous, I guess the only way for me to describe it properly in my mind is a clusterfuck of what is canon, and just, I don't know. I always jump to this conclusion. I always jumped to the conclusion of what I've told you, and I thought it was just common sense, because if you just take a closer look, a tiny closer look, it's obvious that that's what's going on. And then some people, they just don't see it or don't get it. I don't understand. But anyways, let's get away from that. Moving on. Okay, so the next thing to cover is that the CES happened this past week, which is the Consumer Electronics Show. Happens January every week. It happens January every year. It was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Consumer Electronics Show is a place where they basically, technology companies show off a whole lot of fancy gadgets, and they either update you on stuff that they have been working on, or they come out with this brand new stuff to show off. And actually, one of the things that came out at this current CES is something incredibly surprising and interesting to me, which is 4K resolution monitors, which is basically, I don't know, 6 times higher resolution than a 1080 television. It's a little bit more than double the resolution of what monitor I'm using, but that's really interesting. But that's not the point that I want to cover for CES. There are 2 specific things I want to cover. And the first one is the Piston, which is a tiny modular computer, which as soon as it was shown off and news came out that Valve, the company that created the Steam platform for digital distribution of games on PC, had backed them to develop this thing, basically all the media outlets lit up like fire, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is the Steam box. This is Valve's version of a console for the home, for the room." And for those of you who don't know, Steam, it's the #1 digital distribution platform for games on the computer. Just to give you an idea of why the thing is so important, just for the last 3 weeks practically, it was for a very, very long period, there was a the Steam Christmas sale took place, and they do some incredible sales. I picked up, I don't know how many games for $1.50. I mean, they even did a massive sale on very, very well recognized games. Dishonored was that was on sale for, I think, as low as $30. So was Far Cry 3. And, they do this twice a year. They do one for Christmas and they do one for summer. And it's just, it's pretty much a godsend. It's a PC gamer's opportunity to just snatch up 1.5 million titles. A lot of them that you probably won't ever, play because you don't have the time. You just buy them because they're so damn cheap. And, it's an incredible money saver. So, Steam is incredibly important. And the Valve has been teasing at the possibility that they would want to get Steam into the living room. And something that really backs up that fact is that a while ago, they went and they developed something called Big Picture Mode for Steam, which is basically a feature that replaces, it's an extra feature added to the entire Steam client, which replaces the, UI, the navigation system, which is completely designed for mouse and keyboard, to access your games and look through the store. Big Picture Mode completely replaces the mouse and keyboard design for a controller-based design. And they even highlight games that are, designed for a controller over mouse and keyboard. So the fact that they've implemented the big screen feature on the client that you can use right now is a sign that they're really, really starting to move forward with wanting to get, Steam onto the television in your living room, because that's a really important place to vie for. The television is a phenomenally important thing in any house. Well, most houses anyway. In my case, I barely ever watch the TV. The only reason why I have one is so I can hook my PlayStation 3 and Wii up to it. So it's one of those things. I don't even watch TV anymore, really. I stick to internet streaming and whatnot. But anyways, the Valve is trying quite clearly. They're making progress on getting Steam to the big screen in your living room. So whenever the Piston, which is an extremely small piece of equipment, it's a very tiny modular computer, and actually whenever you look at it, it's about the size of your fist. And that's kind of a bad comparison to draw, because everybody's fist is a different size, but the size of a small cantaloupe, I guess you could say, is how big the Piston is, and it can run some pretty hefty games. So, everybody jumped all over this, and I jumped all over it as well, but I'm looking at it now, and I'm saying to myself, this Piston computer, now that, more information has come out, and Gabe Newell, the guy who founded Valve Corporation, now that he's, spoken up about his company backing the Piston tiny modular computer, I'm looking at it now, and I'm saying to myself, this is probably not the Steam box. This is probably Gabe doing his homework. He's investing in, he's got money. So what he's doing is he's investing in various companies that can make tiny modular computers and see how those things work out. He's going to watch a bunch of other people that he's put money into do their thing. And obviously he sees something in each one of these, which is why he's put money into it. But what he's probably expecting is to watch what each of them does, because they're all going to be doing something a bit different, and see which ones, completely flop, completely tank, and which ones have more success. And that'll give him a better idea of just what exactly a real Steam box should have, how it should be built, how it should be implemented, what type of features and support it should have. Because the last thing that you want to do is put a whole lot of money into a project and not really know what you're doing. So the way that I'm looking at it right now, Gabe Newell is more than likely watching other people make mistakes so he doesn't have to lose a whole lot of money and make the mistakes himself. Or I guess you could say lose more money than he has to. But anyway, that's the situation. There's no doubt in my mind that the Piston that they showed off at CES is not a Steam box, but more or less something that Valve is getting its hands in for the sole sake of doing their homework before they actually do something about a real Steam box. If one ever comes to light, though, because we all know Valve runs on Valve time, and God knows if they'll ever actually let one of their projects come to light. Kind of like that elusive Half-Life 3. But anyways, moving on. The other thing at CES that came out that, I don't really have much of anything to say about, there wasn't much of anything shown at CES for that matter, but something that I want to give a little bit of a head nod to, the Oculus Rift. The dev kits are going out soon here, but, and I'm hoping to get my hands on an Oculus Rift relatively soon, hopefully by the end of this year, maybe early next year. I'm not really entirely certain. But I suppose I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Many of you probably have no earthly idea what the Oculus Rift is. Okay, so I could give you the long story, I could give you the short story. I'll give you the short of it first, and then I'll, go into a little bit more of the background information. The short of the story is that the Oculus Rift is a head-mounted three-dimensional display that has gyroscopic tracking. So basically, it's a pair of video goggles that you put on your head and plug into your computer, and it has software that a lot of developers and engine creators, like for instance, the Unreal Engine 4 that's going to be used in the next generation of video games already supports the Oculus Rift in the game engine, so game developers don't have to do much of anything to get it to work. But the Oculus Rift head-mounted display that has motion tracking, and what that means is that it has sensors in it to track the movement of your head as you look left and look right, and it will mirror that movement in the game. It's literally virtual reality, and it's something that I've got my eye on really closely, because all of the reporters who have looked at it, who have taken a closer look to it, and most importantly, major players who understand tech in the industry have taken notice of it. One of the people in the industry who's taken notice of it is John Carmack, who's the man who founded id Software, the creator of the Doom series, and actually he's the creator of the first-person shooter genre, debatably. He took notice of it, and the Doom 3 BFG edition is already enabled for the Oculus Rift. Gabe Newell, the man who runs Valve that I was just talking about, owns Steam and everything, he took notice of it. So those are two major people that I am paying, if they take notice of something, John Carmack, remarkably important because he knows tech really well. He may not, id Software may not be the best game development company anymore, like they used to be, but at the same time, John Carmack knows his hardware tech. So if he takes notice of something, I'm going to notice it as well. And Gabe Newell, he's just way too much of a force to be reckoned with in the PC gaming community for anything he takes an interest in to, slip under the radar. So that's the main reason why the Oculus Rift has caught my eye. On top of the fact that, gyroscopic sensors and virtual reality strapped right in front of your face, definitely interesting. It's got my attention. So the Oculus Rift, the reason why it's possible, why this 3D visor that immerses you in the game is possible, is because of the fact that cell phone technology has pushed things forward leaps and bounds. For instance, there was no real significant demand for a tiny screen with a high pixel count until the smartphone industry started, because you've got your tiny cell phones that were the flip phones, and they had the black and white on the screen, and then you ended up with the tiny really thin ones that had all of the colors on them. And basically, as cell phone technology has progressed, it's pushed forward a whole lot of things. It's pushed forward battery technology because everyone wants a smaller phone with longer battery life. And that means you have to have a smaller battery with longer battery life. So, there's been a market for development. There's been a market for better batteries. So battery development has gone forward exponentially. You need data storage on those phones. So flash memory and solid state data storage, which was severely underdeveloped despite all of the technology being available to develop it, leapt forward light years, extremely fast. It developed 4 times faster than normal tech because it was so far behind for a long time. And, it's just so many things have been just pushed forward so quickly because of cell phone technology. And one of those things, like I said, was liquid crystal displays, LCDs, that you find on pretty much all cell phones nowadays. So what happened was that, it's basically this slew of stuff on the market, and then Nintendo came around and they decided to introduce the Wii with the motion sensing controls, which pointed out that we could now figure out how to do motion tracking of a sort without having to use really old clunky systems. And that's exactly what the Oculus Rift is. It's a result of a bunch of this common tech that's kind of just flooded out onto the market over the years. And the Oculus Rift is basically just it's relatively simple what they're trying to do. It's just 2 relatively high quality screens put in front of each eye, which are then hooked up to sensors, which, track what the hell your head is doing whenever you're looking around, so it can mirror those movements in the game. That's technology that's not new. It's been around. It's just no one's tried to go after it, because the last time that, head motion tracking for head displays, the last time that was done, I think it was around the turn of the century in the year 2000, 2001 or something for PC gaming, and it didn't work out too well. Very few games supported it. The hardware, it basically had to be supported by the video card manufacturers, and none of the companies really supported it, so that's the reason why it didn't take off back then. But now the technology, it's really more or less there, and it just has to be developed, which is the reason why the Oculus Rift has my eye. I think it's the first opportunity for there to be another big change in how we experience video games. And, I think that if nothing else, the PC market still has another major game-changing opportunity in this to, change the gaming scene again if the Oculus Rift does take off. But at the same time, I don't know it will. But yeah, that's what the Oculus Rift is. That's the reason why it's being developed, why it's possible to be developed, and I'm keeping an eye on it. The dev kits are going out, around now, and I'm very hopeful that the consumer version of the product, which will be significantly better than the dev kits, will be out sometime later this year, maybe early next year. Okay, moving on. Now that I've brought you up to speed and we've covered a little bit of news, there's just one last thing to cover, and that's every single time that I do a podcast, I ask everybody to ask me questions, game related and whatnot, so I can answer your questions and basically flesh out a subject if you want me to. And, this time is no different. Believe it or not, there are a couple of questions from, 3 months ago that are still somewhat relevant today. And I'm going to cover those things. And on the exact same note, I want to remind all of you, if you have a question to ask, who knows when I'm going to do another podcast again. It may be in a couple of months. It may be sooner. I'm not entirely certain because, these things, they're come and go. There's no specific schedule that I have for them. I kind of do them whenever I feel I should or need to, or it's been way too long since I have done one, which is the case now. But anyways, put your comments down, ask your comments in the comments, ask your questions in the comments. And if you see someone else ask a question that you want answered as well, don't repost the question, upvote whoever asked that question, because the more thumbs a question gets, the more likely I will be to cover it, even if it does turn out to be out of date. But anyways, the first question that I'm going to answer is from the previous episode 3 months ago. All of these are from the previous episode 3 months ago. This one is from Hollywood Raptor 0016, who asks, do you think that the Elder Scrolls has written itself into a corner? I mean, they showed and killed dragons in the same story, so they won't be back, and Dovahkiin and the dragon shouts are so famous, but there is no way to write them into the next story because it won't be in Skyrim. And my simple answer to this, I mean, this is, despite the length of this question, I can answer it very quickly and very simply. No, they haven't painted themselves into a corner, because I've always asked the exact same question, what on earth can they do next time? But they seem to be finding ways to keep it interesting and different. The thing about the Elder Scrolls series is that Todd Howard, the man who runs Bethesda Game Studios, the group that made, Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Skyrim, and Morrowind, and, there are games that go further back, but Todd Howard made a statement before Skyrim came out that basically what they are doing is they are trying to remake the game every single time they make another title, and they have to figure out how to make it feel new and fresh and different. And really, dragon shouts and whatnot, dragon shouts, the dragons themselves, those are more like quirks. They're not necessarily major attracting. They're not major factors, okay? If you think about it, most of the game, you spend time inside of dungeons. And whether or not you use the shouts is another story, but the game is completely playable. Excuse me. The game is completely playable without using the shouts at all. And there's a whole lot of other mechanics that go into making that game work without using those interesting and different features. To make an example, I guess you could say that we should place Morrowind at the 0 point for the Elder Scrolls series, because Morrowind was, you know, probably the last. Morrowind is, you know, that game in the series. Lots of long-running series have a game like Morrowind in the fact that it was the first fully 3D version. You know, everything was 3D. There was no, you know, there was nothing sprite. There were no sprites taking the place of a three-dimensional object in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, Mario had that event whenever it went from Super Mario World to Super Mario 64. Zelda had that incident whenever it went from A Link to the Past to Ocarina of Time. You know, any video game series that went from the transition of two-dimensional to three-dimensional has a game where they can pretty much get away with just remaking an old game in 3D, and nobody's going to complain because it's the first damn game in 3D in the series. And that's what Morrowind was. So, not to say that it's the exact same thing, but that's the reason why I'm going to use Morrowind as the reference point. Morrowind, first fully 3D game where they basically give you an enormous breathing world where you can you can go anywhere, you can do anything. They basically drop you in the middle of 9 square miles and they say, okay, that's the direction you should go. Yeah, that's the direction you should go. Have fun. But there are no invisible walls to tell you not to go the opposite direction. So, you know, that was a major event for for a lot of people, and Morrowind was phenomenally more successful than the previous two games, Arena and Daggerfall, because it was not only the first 3D game, but it was also available on the Xbox. You know, and console markets naturally reach a wider base than the PC market. But, you know, that's what Morrowind did. It basically set up the series for, you know, it put a new standard up. And then Oblivion happened. And Oblivion, if you look at it mechanically, it's basically the exact same game, just like Todd Howard said. But, you know, there were significant improvements to, you know, streamline the content. But it wasn't really different. It wasn't any different at all. In fact, you know, I've played through all of Morrowind. I've played through all of Oblivion. I've played both of them far more than I should, but for some reason they still feel like different games. And the only major difference, like, that was specifically put in Oblivion that makes it significantly different from Morrowind from a mechanical standpoint is the fact that they put in Oblivion gates and the ability to, you know, take the sigil stone out of an Oblivion gate and then use that stone to enchant items. But, I mean, you could enchant items in Morrowind, you could enchant items in Oblivion without using sigil stones either. There was nothing specifically interesting that made the game stand out other than its kick-ass, extremely detailed interactive gameplay with the game world, and the fact that it gives you an enormous game world without boundaries, except for the edges of the map. And then Skyrim comes along, and it's doing the exact same freaking thing. Yes, there are major changes and overhauls to the way that the game plays, but that's really what's carrying it. Yes, I can kill... yes, there are dragons, and I can kill dragons. And yes, I can absorb the soul of a dragon so I can learn how to use their shouts. But that's not really what defines the game completely. There's still a lot of swordplay that, you know, it was in the last games. There's magic there, just like in the last games. It's the core gameplay is still what's carrying the games. So they haven't painted themselves into a corner in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion, because they're literally just remaking the game, and because they have such a good formula for how that... I mean, they have such a good base for how the games work. It's very difficult to screw that up because they know what they're doing with it already. Well, I said that I could answer the question very quickly, but I didn't. But there's your answer. No, they have not painted themselves into a corner. All right, moving on to the next question. This is 2 out of 3 questions, and it's from the user Gone Rampant, who says, "So Link, have you tried the popular mod DayZ?" Maybe it's Days. I've never really figured that out. So my answer to that is no, I have not played DayZ, but I have seen a whole lot of it. And on the note of that, one of the reasons why I decided to cover this, not just because it had a whole lot of upvotes, but because this relates to some other current events. Last month, in December, what happened was something came to a head. There was a game called, well, I suppose I should cover what DayZ is. So there's a game called Arma 2, and Arma 2 is a couple of years old. And basically, it's a game that, doesn't have anything to make it stand out today very much. But there was a man, I don't know his name, he created a very, very, very large and intricate mod for Arma 2 Combined Ops called DayZ. And it's literally an MMO survival horror game, I guess you could say. You're dropped into a very, very large world, and you just have to survive. The world, there's fields, there's roads, there's towns. Your goal is to get food, survive, and not die from the zombies. But the catch is that there's nothing preventing player versus player. There's nothing preventing player versus player combat. And what happened was that, this really, really took off because it's an MMO without levels. It's a free roam MMO that relies very heavily on atmosphere, and it allows you to pick a lot. You can pick up and loot a whole lot of different items. You can fix up cars to get them running. There's just so much that you can do in the game, and I've seen quite a bit of it, in all honesty. And I mean, it's different. It's very different. I haven't seen anyone do something like this before, really. So DayZ gets extremely popular. It gets so popular that, I mean, combined to Arma 2 Combined Ops, the game that the mod is created for, this mod gets so popular that Arma 2 Combined Ops, the game that it's created for, ends up going on the front page of Steam for like, I don't know, a month or two, because people want to buy the game so bad to play this mod. And what ends up happening, what ends up coming out of this in the long run, is that DayZ, the man who created it, ends up getting noticed by a publisher, I believe, and he was given the resources to go back and basically take his mod and make it stop being a mod and turn it into an earnest game standalone. So that's the story there. And like I said, I haven't actually played DayZ, but the reason why I'm bringing this up, beyond the fact that I haven't played DayZ and it relates to the current events and the fact that new information has come forth that says, okay, DayZ is going to be delayed again, and it's it's going to take longer to get out. So basically, the developer, the lead developer, is saying, listen, it's going to come out whenever it's done. We're not going to half-ass this. But the other reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the other thing that cropped up out of this, which was the wars, or War Z, War Z, whatever you want to call it. War Z, it was a competition. Basically, there was this development studio called Hammerpoint Software who saw what was going on with DayZ, and they thought, okay, now that's worth making money. So their solution was to come up with their own version of what basically DayZ was doing. And basically they copied the game and they put it up there in its beta stage saying, okay, buy access now, and while we're still developing the game, and you get access for cheaper, but at the exact same time you get the game sooner, and it's officially supported, it's not a mod, etc., etc. And they were pretty straightforward. They were a little bit shady with their advertising, back in the beginning, okay, the thing that was shady about what they did was they said that it was a game that was in development for a long time, when in all honesty that was completely fake. They had nothing to back that up because there was no news of this game ever existing until after the DayZ mod popped up and got really popular. So that was the only real thing that they did that was shady, whenever you could only buy the game off of their website. Then, and you know, on their website, it seemed pretty clear and forward that they were saying, you know, hey, these are all the things that we want to put in the game, and these are all the things that are in the game. Well, that's all fine and good, but the entire situation just completely blew up and went to crap whenever the game was approved on Steam, and it was, you know, selling for a discount price. Basically, what happened was that War Z went up on Steam, and instead of having all the features on the official website, you know, they listed all the features in game, and then they listed all the features that they were planning on putting in game. And instead of having those two lists of features separate on the Steam page, they combined them into one titled things that are already in the game. So a lot of people, you know, bought the game. A lot of stuff was missing. It just wasn't there. And they were mad. A lot of people were pissed off because that flat out, it is false advertising, saying that things are in the game that aren't in the game yet. You know, so people got mad and they took to the forums to start complaining about this. Well, Hammerpoint is less than honest whenever it comes to moderating their forums, because on the official forums, anybody who said anything bad about the game was silenced. Their posts were deleted. If they were repeat offenders, they were banned straight out for saying anything bad about the game or complaining about, you know, how it was handled. And then, as unfortunate as it was, what happened was that Hammerpoint's employees were granted privilege of moderating the War Z section of the Steam forums, and they were doing the exact same thing there. So, you know, you buy a game on Steam, the stuff that you expected to be in the game isn't there, that, you know, was listed on the product page. You go to the forums and you want to find out what's going on. You want to discuss this. You post something. Your post is immediately deleted, and you know, you're labeled as being a troublemaker for one reason or another. And then maybe if you just can't figure it out and you try to post again and it happens again, there's a possibility that you've been permabanned because of someone who has been given those privileges who isn't actually affiliated with Steam or Valve, and they just have privilege over that section of the forums. So that's basically what happened. It was ridiculous. In fact, I don't know the man's name, but the lead of Hammerpoint software or development or whatever, the lead of Hammerpoint was quoted as saying, "I don't understand how people could misinterpret." I think it was, yeah, this was a situation of the maximum number of people that could be on a server at once. It was advertised as 100, but the actual limit that was implemented was only 50. And he was quoted as saying something along the lines of, I can't really remember it off the top of my head, but basically he was saying, you misinterpreted our statement of a maximum 100 whenever it's actually 50. That's not our fault, that's your fault. We said 100, but it's actually 50. We didn't tell you bad information. You misinterpreted the number 100 to mean 100 instead of 50. That's basically what he came off as saying, which was absolutely just, I'm sorry, but pardon my French, it was fucking stupid. Fucking stupid as shit. But that's the whole entire deal. And it's the main reason after this whole debacle occurred, you know, it was just straight out shady. And the last thing that turned into the nail in War Z's coffin was the fact that a full month before the game went up on Steam, before it was available even at all, maybe, the trademark that they filed for the title, War Z, was rejected by the patent office because not the patent office, either way, the copyright was rejected months before they put the game out because War Z was too similar to a motion picture coming out called World War Z. So, I mean, I can definitely see the similarity there. War Z and World War Z. Yeah, I can see the similarity. And the, I don't know, I think it might be Universal who filed the copyright claim on World War Z. They filed their copyright on it a week before Hammerpoint. So Hammerpoint just missed out. And despite the fact that it was rejected months in advance, they still went through with calling the game War Z, which, you know, that came out, I think, about Christmas Day. News that, you know, because it takes a long time for these things in the patent office and the trademark and everything to come through with, you know, actually making things public about trademarks. So it came out at about Christmas Day or right around Christmas, and you know, as soon as that came out, I remember reading the story about that, and I was like, well, if it had any leg left to stand on, some broken leg that it could hobble around on, it's gone now. Its legs, the legs on the game War Z are no longer broken. They are gone. They have been cut off. So that's the whole situation with War Z, and it's the reason, and the reason why I take interest in DayZ now is because of this. You know, I was interested in DayZ, and then I was interested in War Z because of the, you know, the remarkable similarity between the two games, and I wasn't sure which one to go with. But after this whole debacle, I'm like, oh well, it's obvious which one I got to go for now, and I'm really interested in DayZ. I'll probably give it a shot once it goes, once it's actually released, the full version standalone copy of DayZ, because it looks like a relatively interesting game. It seems like a game that I'd like to play with a couple of friends of mine, maybe other people online, I don't know. But that's the long story. Hopefully, if any of you didn't know the big story about why DayZ is a popular title, why anybody cares about it, or, you know, maybe you heard about War Z in the news over the past over previous weeks, now you're kind of up to speed on the whole situation and big, really horrible, quite frankly, clusterfuck that occurred, all because of Hammerpoint being extremely dishonest. But anyways, moving right along. This is the end of the podcast and the final question. And I'm going to keep this one short because I'm getting sandpaper throat at this point. I've been talking for so long. It's one of the reasons why I stay away from these podcasts. Like I said in the beginning, if I had a partner, I'd have someone I could shut up for a minute and I'd be able to rest my throat for a while. But, you know, as it stands, I'm basically talking to myself for, you know, a good 1-2 hours. And my throat gets pretty rough from yammering on for so long. But anyways, this is the last question. That came from episode 10. Username Horrid Road War. That seems really, really familiar. Maybe this guy's asked a question before. Anyways, the question is, did Borderlands reach your expectations? And the last podcast went up in October, and if I'm not mistaken, Borderlands 2 came out in September. So obviously this is a question not about Borderlands, but about Borderlands 2. So, Road War, my answer to you is yes, Borderlands 2 did live up to my expectations. One thing that I was a little bit disappointed about with it, though, was the lack of severe death animations, because that was one of the things that I felt really helped to complete the original Borderlands experience, just the gory ways that some of those characters could die. And, you know, it was all depicted in a cartoony sense, so it kind of softened the violent blow, which was the gruesome depictions. But, you know, basically whenever it came to Borderlands 2, and whenever I got it on the day it came out, I went into the game thinking to myself, all I want is basically Borderlands 1, but a little bit different. So that's exactly what I got. I got Borderlands 1, but a little bit different. I wasn't completely... some of the changes that they made didn't quite gel with me whenever I first started the game, but now that I've spent, I don't know, 100 hours on the game or so, I spent way more time than I should have. I could spend countless hours more if I had the time and, in all honesty, really cared to go back to it, but Borderlands 2 is a real grind fest, and I covered the reason why the first Borderlands, I did do a specific video over it for my blog quite a long time ago about, what makes it fun. And the fact of the matter is that, I break the whole thing down in that video. I suppose I'll put a link to it down in the description now that I've brought it up. But in that video, I break down what makes the game so addictive. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to explain the whole thing. If you want to know, go check the other video. But the point is, that's exactly what Borderlands 1 was. And Borderlands 2, exact same thing. But there were a couple of changes. They took away the pro efficiencies for weapons. That seemed like one... I really wished that they hadn't taken that away whenever I first started the game. I realized that it was best for balancing issues that they took it out, but even now I still wish they had it. I still wish it was in there. Not because it's necessary for the game, but just because I want it back. I wasn't exactly completely keen on some of the ways that the story developed. Specifically, I wasn't keen on what happened to one of the major characters in the game. I won't spoil anything for those of you who haven't played through the game and care about the story. And I also wasn't too keen on how they basically related the story of Borderlands 2 to Borderlands 1, basically turning it into a bigger story. Kind of like saying, well, basically put, the way that they built the story, they said, well, this is how Borderlands 1 happened, but guess what? It turns out to be like a smaller box, and that was inside of this bigger box called Borderlands 2. The first game played into a bigger plot. It was like, I don't really like it whenever whenever story writers decide to like nullify or, downplay the importance of the big epic struggle that happened in a previous installment by saying that it was just a tiny part of a much bigger story, and I really don't like it when people do that. So that was the only other thing that I really had a problem with. Other than that, the game turned out to be great. I loved the guns in it. It was a whole lot of fun. Yeah, that's the beginning and end of it. I didn't like how they removed the pro efficiencies and some of the story movements. The ways that the story was written, I just didn't like. Other than that, Borderlands 2 lived up to all of my expectations because it's exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for anything new, big, or different. And for that and because it was exactly what I was looking for, it didn't try to be anything new, big, or different. It just basically rehashed everything that it did in the first game. I found it to be completely worth my money. So there you have it. That's the answer. Well, and on that note, I'm going to sign out because this is an extremely long podcast compared to what I was expecting it to be. My throat feels like it's going to just completely crumble into dust after I stop talking. So I will see you guys later. I'm going to have a little bit more content coming out before I go back to sleeper mode. And I just want to remind everyone, do not forget to post, questions down in the comments for, what you want me to, post your questions down in the comments that you want me to answer. Try to make them video game related because that's the area that I really, really, have experience with. And finally, if you want these podcasts to come out more often, by all means, like I said in the beginning, go ahead, shoot my name over to someone who, to another YouTuber who is really, really ingrained in the video game culture and follows the media and whatnot, because I would love to discuss news with someone else on microphone, and, if at all possible, I could You know, if I had another partner, maybe 2 other partners, we could record for a good 2 hours, and we could split the podcast half, and, you know, you could listen to it on mine, and then you could listen to it on another person's channel at the same time, and get completely different content either way. Who knows? But regardless of whether or not you decide to comment or try to help me find a partner for this, I'm William Strife, and it's been a real fun time talking to you guys again. But until the next time I'm in another podcast or another video I put out, whether it be a guide or a play, I'll see you guys next time. Later.